Okay, so are you ready to dive in with us today? We're tackling a question that I think a lot of us have probably thought about. Um, can you really have a younger looking brain at 70?
That's a good one.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And we've got some interesting stuff to dig into. We've got this press release from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden.
Okay.
And there's this whole Reddit thread with all these opinions flying around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So it seems like a lot of people are thinking and maybe even worrying about their brains aging.
Yeah. It's definitely a hot topic, and for good reason, I think. We all want to keep our minds sharp as we age, right?
Right, exactly. So what's got me really intrigued is this idea that our lifestyle choices can actually impact how our brains age, even in our 70s. Is that really true?
Yeah.
Can scientists actually tell if someone's brain looks younger than it should? Like, how do they even do that?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. This Karolinska study, they used MRI scans to get these detailed images of the brains of 739 healthy 70-year-olds.
Okay, so they've got all these brain pictures. Then what?
Then they brought in the AI. They used this AI algorithm to analyze those images and basically estimate a biological age for each brain.
Hold on. So it's like the AI is looking at all those wrinkles and gray hairs, but in the brain.
Well, not exactly wrinkles and gray hairs, but you're on the right track. The AI is trained on this massive data set of brain scans from people of all different ages, and it learns to recognize these subtle patterns in the brain's structure. You know, the ones that are associated with aging.
So the AI is like this super smart brain detective. It's looking for clues about how old the brain really is.
Exactly. And the difference between that estimated brain age and the person's actual age, that's what they call the brain age gap.
Brain age gap.
Like-
Okay, I'm starting to think I want mine to be like negative. But seriously, what kind of things did they find that were linked to, a bigger gap, meaning a brain that seems older?
Unfortunately, some of the usual suspects popped up, things like diabetes, stroke, inflammation. They all seem to contribute to a larger brain age gap. And there's a common thread there. They can all damage blood vessels.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's the bad news. But there's got to be some good news too, right? Something we could do to keep our brains looking young and spry.
Oh, absolutely. And it might not be a huge surprise. This study found that people with a healthy lifestyle, especially those who exercise regularly, tended to have a smaller brain age gap.
So all that talk about exercise being good for you, it's not just hype. It actually shows up in our brain structure.
That's what the study suggests, yeah. And this is where it gets really fascinating because when we think about exercise, we often just think about, weight management, heart health, all that good stuff. But this study is suggesting that those benefits, they actually extend to the very structure of our brains.
Okay, I need to hear more about this AI thing I'm picturing, like a little robot doctor with a tiny magnifying glass peering into my skull. How does it actually work? And could it be used in the future, like clinically?
Well, it's not quite as dramatic as a tiny robot doctor.
Too bad.
But it is pretty remarkable technology.
Yeah.
So what the AI algorithm does is it analyzes the MRI images, and it's looking at specific features, like the thickness of the cortex, the outer layer of the brain, the part responsible for things like memory and decision-making. It also looks for signs of shrinkage or damage in certain areas. And based on all these factors, it can estimate how old the brain appears compared to others in the data set, that is.
So it's not just some, parlor trick. This AI is actually analyzing real measurable features of the brain. And you said it might have clinical applications down the line. Like, what would that even look like?
Exactly. Right now, it's mostly used in research, but the researchers believe it has the potential to be used in clinical settings, in the future. Imagine being able to get a brain age checkup along with your other health screenings.
Whoa. That would be some serious motivation to make healthy choices.
I know, right?
But what really strikes me is how this study emphasizes how important good vascular health is for our brains. I mean, I knew it was important, but
It's a crucial connection, definitely. Think of your blood vessels like the highways of your body.
okay, I like that.
They're responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to every single cell, and that includes the cells in your brain. So if those highways are damaged or clogged, traffic slows down, and the brain doesn't get what it needs to function the way it should.
It's like neglecting the infrastructure of a city. Eventually, everything starts to fall apart. So if we're talking about a younger-looking brain, what would that actually look like in one of those MRI scans?
Well, obviously, it's not about wrinkles or gray hairs, haha.
Yeah.
What we'd see is a thicker cortex, which basically means that the outer layer of the brain is healthier and more robust. And we'd also see less evidence of shrinkage or damage in key areas.
So it's not like the brain is literally turning back time. It's more about keeping things in good shape, just like any other part of our body.
Exactly. It's about preserving the brain's resilience and its ability to function optimally, even as we get older.
I like that. Preserving resilience. It makes
Yeah.
sense. And this study seems to suggest that we can actually take steps to protect our brains from the wear and tear of aging, just like we can protect our hearts or joints, right?
Precisely.
That is encouraging. But what about the differences they found between men and women? Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, that was one of the most intriguing findings, I thought. The researchers found that the factors linked to brain aging, they actually seem to vary between the sexes. For example, higher levels of physical activity were more strongly associated with a younger brain age in women than in men.
Interesting. Any theories about why that might be?
That's what they're hoping to explore further. They're planning to investigate both biological factors, like hormones and things, but also sociocultural influences, just to see if they can shed light on why men and women might age differently.
Wow, it's like there's this whole other layer to the story, just waiting to be uncovered. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to take a little detour into the world of Reddit because, well, there's been quite a bit of chatter about this study over there.
Ah, Reddit. Always a fascinating place.
Right, a real mix of perspectives.
Mhm.
Shall we see what the internet has to say?
Let's dive in.
Okay, so we've left the lab and we're diving into the world of Reddit to see what people are saying about this whole brain age thing.
Oh, should be interesting.
Yeah, and let me tell you, there are some pretty strong opinions out there.
I bet. It's really fascinating, though, to see how this research has captured people's imaginations.
I know, and sparks so much discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like some people are taking the study's findings as like a personal challenge, almost like a competition.
Yeah.
I saw one comment that said, "My brain better be younger than my real age. I do Sudoku every day."
Well, it's great that people are thinking about their brain health and everything. But, it's important to remember that this study, it's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
There are so many factors that can affect how our brains age. And Sudoku, while it's mentally stimulating, it's not exactly a magic bullet.
Yeah. No quick fixes, unfortunately. But what I find really interesting is how this research is making people question the very idea of aging. Like, I saw some comments that were almost philosophical, wondering if a younger brain means you're somehow defying the aging process.
It's a really thought-provoking question for sure. I mean, we tend to think of aging as this kind of linear process where our bodies and minds just inevitably decline, right, over time. But this study, it kind of suggests that maybe it's not so straightforward.
Yeah, like maybe there's more room for variability than we thought.
Exactly. And this actually ties into a really important point that some of the Reddit users brought up. They're questioning whether focusing so much on brain age could actually lead to a new kind of ageism.
Oh, I see what they mean. Like if we start measuring brain age and comparing ourselves to others, it could create all this anxiety, right?
Yeah, and then pressure.
To maintain a certain youthfulness in our brains.
Yeah.
Even if that's not realistic or healthy.
Right, exactly. We don't want to create a culture where people feel ashamed or inadequate if their brains don't measure up to some arbitrary standard. It's really important to remember that aging is a natural process, and every brain ages differently.
Well said. Okay, before we get too deep into the sociological stuff.
Right.
I want to circle back to the science for a minute. This study didn't actually look at cognitive function, right? But we keep talking about this idea that a younger-looking brain might just function better. So what's the connection there?
That's a great question. And it's something that researchers are definitely exploring more and more. There's a growing body of research that suggests a strong link between brain structure and our cognitive abilities.
Well, so for example, if you have a thicker cortex, that might not just look good on a scan. It might actually mean that you have better memory or faster processing speed.
That's the idea, yeah. And while we can't make any definite statements based on just this one study, it does add to the growing evidence that, the choices we make, our lifestyles, they can have a real impact on how well our brains function as we age.
It makes sense though, right? I mean, if we take care of our bodies, we're also taking care of our brains.
Exactly. It's all connected. And that brings up another important point. What are those brain-healthy habits that we should all be focusing on?
Well, we've talked about exercise, but I'm sure there's more to it than that, right? Like, what else can we do to keep our brains sharp?
Well, a few key areas come to mind. Aside from regular physical activity, a balanced diet, one that's rich in fruits, vegetables, and omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay, so those brain-boosting foods we always hear about, they're not just marketing hype.
Nope, they actually matter. Certain nutrients, like antioxidants and those omega-3s, they've been shown to protect our brain cells from damage and inflammation.
Okay, so exercise and diet. Got it. What else?
Sleep is another big one. Getting enough sleep is crucial for brain health because sleep is when our brains consolidate memories and clear out waste products.
You're telling me I am all about a good night's sleep. But what about mental stimulation? Does that play a role, like keeping our brains active?
Absolutely. Engaging in mentally stimulating activities like
Mm.
reading, puzzles, learning new skills, all of that can help maintain our cognitive function and even promote the growth of new brain cells.
It's like giving our brains a workout, right? Just like we work out our bodies.
Exactly. And variety is key, just like with physical exercise. Challenge your brain with new things, learn new skills, and just keep it engaged.
Okay, so we've got exercise, diet, sleep, and mental stimulation. Is that the magic formula?
It's a great foundation for sure. But there's one more piece to the puzzle that I think is often overlooked, and that's social connection.
Right. We are social creatures after all. How did that tie into brain health?
Well, strong social connections have been shown to have this protective effect on cognitive function. Spending time with loved ones, having meaningful conversations, feeling a sense of belonging, all of these things can contribute to better brain health.
It's like those social interactions are actually providing some kind of nourishment for our brains.
That's a great way to put it, yeah, social connection. It's just as important for our mental well-being as it is for our physical health.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Exercise, diet, sleep, mental stimulation, and those all-important social connections. It's really a holistic approach to brain health, isn't it?
It really is. It's about recognizing that our brains aren't just these isolated organs. They're part of this intricate system, connected to our bodies, our environments. What we do for our bodies, we do for our brains.
That makes sense. But let's be realistic for a second. Not everyone has the time or resources to live this perfectly healthy lifestyle. So does that mean the rest of us are doomed to have older brains?
Not at all. Every little bit helps, honestly. Even small changes, like incorporating more fruits and vegetables into your diet, or taking a daily walk, those things can make a difference over time.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about making those conscious choices, right, to support our brain health, no matter where we're starting from.
Exactly. And it's never too late to start, even if you haven't been living the healthiest lifestyle. Your brain is still capable of change. It can still adapt.
That's good to hear. So our brains are always a work in progress, huh?
Always. And we're the architects. We have the power to shape our brain's future through the choices we make.
Wow, that is a powerful thought. But what about the things that are kind of outside of our control? Like, what about genetics? Do our genes have the final say in how our brains age?
Well, genetics definitely play a role. They can influence our predisposition to certain conditions, which can then, indirectly affect brain aging. But it's important to remember that our genes aren't necessarily our destiny.
So even if you have a family history of, say, Alzheimer's disease, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get it yourself.
Exactly. Our lifestyle choices can still have a significant impact, regardless of our genetic background.
That's amazing. It means we actually have more control than we might think.
And that's why research like this is so exciting, It gives us hope that we can take control of our brain health and really age gracefully, both mentally and physically.
It really does make you think, huh? Like, if we can have some control over how our brains age, what could that mean for, our lives as we get older? Are we, changing what aging even means?
It's a huge question, isn't it? I mean, we've always thought of aging as this period of decline, but research like this is suggesting that maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe we can age with more vitality, and stay sharper longer than we thought possible.
Yeah, I mean, it really challenges those assumptions, right? We think about aging as slowing down, retiring all that long. But if we could keep our brains, functioning well for longer, maybe those later years could be a time for, I don't know, new things. New adventures, maybe even new careers.
Exactly. Think about the possibilities. Imagine people in their 70s and 80s starting businesses or writing books, traveling the world, all while still having that mental edge.
It'd be like this whole new chapter full of, potential. But it also brings up some interesting questions too, right? How would society even adapt to people living longer and staying sharper?
Yeah, it would definitely require some big changes in how we think about things. And our social structures, for sure, like retirement, for instance. Instead of stopping work completely at a certain age, maybe it becomes more of a gradual thing. People working part-time, volunteering, pursuing those passions alongside their careers.
And think about the impact on learning. If our brains are more adaptable for longer, the potential for growth would be huge.
Right. It's a really intriguing concept. Instead of cramming all our education into the first few decades of life, maybe learning becomes more of a lifelong thing. People picking up new skills and knowledge all the time.
It's like our brains become this incredible, you know, ever-evolving thing, always adapting and growing.
Exactly. And this research, it's giving us a little peek into that future, I think. A future where aging isn't seen as a limitation, but an opportunity to keep growing and exploring.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, but for now, let's come back down to earth for a minute. What's the big takeaway? What should our listeners remember from this deep dive?
I think the main message here is that we have more control over our brain health than we realize. Even small changes, those little things we do, they can really make a difference in how our brains age.
Yeah, it's a message of hope, right? Like we're not just stuck, passively going through this aging process. We can actually take charge and shape our cognitive futures.
Exactly. And that's powerful, I think. So let's all raise a glass to those amazing brains of ours and make a commitment to treat them well.
Cheers to that. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, a healthy brain is a happy brain, and it's never too late to start taking care of yours.